Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Brandon. Welcome to Audio Addiction, where you can find latest album reviews. You can find our band interviews, and you can find other music-related content on the channel. I post 5 days a week, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you aren't familiar with the channel, make sure to hit that thumbs up, share it, subscribe. It goes a long way. Thank you guys for the immense support. It's been fantastic over the past couple days, weeks. I've been posting 5 days a week, which has been a lot for me personally, but I've been really enjoying just the energy and just the drive to continue doing some really great stuff. So if you've got some awesome bands, let me know below and I'll go give them a check out. But we're going to be talking about the Great Heights band's newest record, Cabin Fever. My mind's not fine. Wish I could string it all together like your favorite sweater. My mind's not fine. For those of you who aren't familiar with the channel, I've had these guys on twice to do interviews. I did an album review of their latest record, which I have on vinyl, Rad Pop. It was released in 2018 over at CI Records, which is very dope if you haven't checked it out already. And if you haven't checked out the review, you know, you can go check it out if you'd like, if you feel so inclined to. But this band has been on my radar for a hot minute. I've really enjoyed their growth as a band collectively, but I've also just really enjoyed their music and how they've been able to kind of incorporate really strong like pop elements with some rock and a little bit of punk energy in there too. So when Neil had approached me about doing a review of this one, I was really stoked, especially considering it's an EP, and I've been, like I've said, I've had my plate full, so it's been fun to kind of go through a shorter record and just really listen through to it in its in entirety. So I'm gonna go through each track, give you my thoughts and opinions on it, go through some pros and cons, and then finish it out with an overall rating. So the first track is called Off the Grid. I really enjoyed the thing that Eric did. He did it live, I believe in his house, because you know everybody's I'm not gonna say the word because I'm trying not to get demonetized, but he was doing it in his house, and I really liked the more stripped back performance of this. So when I actually heard the song on the record, I felt like he emulated that vibe pretty well. You know, granted, there was no like live drums, there wasn't like live track bass or anything like that. There could have been, because I know he's a producer in his spare time. But getting back to the track itself, I really appreciated the intro. I thought it was very cool. I love the sort of layered vocal effects that they have on it. I think it's very reminiscent of their past record, Rad Pop, as I had mentioned prior. And I've always appreciated their kind of ability to include electronics, very similarly to Motion City Soundtrack, in their music. And I know that I had drawn that comparison in the review that I did for Rad Pop as well, but I definitely feel like they do pull a lot of that strong vibes, and while it may not necessarily be a lot of synth on this EP in particular, I think that they take a lot of those sorts of elements and put it into guitar effects, which can kind of emulate those sorts of sounds, which is very nice. Something else I've always really appreciated is how Eric and Neil kind of balance off of each other. I think one of them usually takes the primary role and the other person takes the back seat, or the backup vocals, which is very cool. But I like that it's not particularly focused on one artist or one vocalist in particular, whether it be Eric or Neil. I think they do a good job of switching both of them off in tracks, and you'll hear that in this EP as well. But I love that there's just a really great consistency to the chorus of this track. It was a portion of the song that I really enjoyed the most, actually. I like that Eric does a good majority of the vocals in this track. I think he's got a really great tone to his voice, much similarly to how much I like Neil's tone in his voice, and I think it's even more accentuated on a track I'll be talking about a little later. But I also appreciate the little like click track that they had going on. Whether it was intentional in the writing process of the song or if it just happened to fit and they just left it in. I think it has a sort of whimsical quality that I really enjoy, and it just shows that they're having kind of a good time and enjoying the ability to write a really great track. which is very cool. I love that it has this kind of really great pop rocky sort of vibe to it, and then the harmonies really send it over the top. For me, I've always had a big love for harmonies. I think they are definitely underutilized in a lot of genres. I would say that some genres don't particularly need it. Like, I feel like, obviously a death metal artist would probably unlikely use that sort of technique, but I feel like in a lot of pop music they utilize those harmonies in a really great way, and I think it's partially the reason why a lot of great pop tracks have that hook or that sort of vibe to it, is because of those harmonies or those backing vocals or something like that that really kind of draw you in from not only the main kind of vocal take, but also the kind of background pieces, the background noises that are going on, which I really appreciate. I also like how Paul and Owen are really holding down the thick end, which is very cool. They really hold down the verses. I think that is probably one of the strongest portions of those tracks as well. Is just the way that Owen and just Paul kind of play off of each other. I think it's very awesome. And just the utilization of every member in this group, I think, is extremely well done, and, is further stated in a track like this. So we're going to move into track number 2, which is Clutter. This is the most recent single that they have released. The album is already out already. I think it released yesterday, I'm pretty sure, or Tuesday. I'm not entirely sure. I know it released like on an off day. Usually I see albums release on a Friday, so it was a little bit strange. But anyway, getting back to the track itself, I like that Neil takes the lead in this one. You can clearly tell it's Neil because he has this sort of like tonality to his voice that every time I listen to a Grey Heights band's track, I know this is Neil. I could hear it is clearly distinct. And then Eric does just a great job of following up his vocals and also kind of adding his own layering process to these tracks. I also really love the chorus of this track. This is probably one of the best choruses that they've ever written. It has this really kind of earworm quality to it in like the best way possible. You'll wind up singing along to the chorus at some point, throughout listening to this song in particular. It just has that like pop hook quality to it, which I really love. It has these like sprinkly pop bits to it, but it also has this little rock tinge to it that's just really, real focused on that sort of rock vibe. The harmonies remind me a ton of a classic rock band that I really enjoy, the Beach Boys. I think that the way that they have kind of the harmonies arranged feels very reminiscent of that. To me, also another band, Relient K, I feel like they utilize the harmonies super well. But I feel like the comparison to those two bands to the Great Heights band, I feel like is well in the right, and they definitely remain among those ranks in terms of bands that do really great harmonies, at least. As I mentioned before, I think it has one of the catchiest choruses and just catchiest song that I've heard pretty much all year. I like, so far I've really enjoyed just the vibe of it. Every time I get back to this track, it's one that I'm just like, this is phenomenal. I really enjoy it. And it probably has, to me, the most feelings of rap pop, their last record. It does have a little bit of synthy kind of like electronic bits in there that are done by guitar, which I was further corrected by in a guitar playthrough video that they posted up on Rad Pop Records, which is very cool. So otherwise I would have probably assumed it was some sort of synth line, which again isn't really a bad thing, but it was something I enjoyed regardless. And definitely go check out Clutter because they released a really cool music video with it. So we're gonna move into track number 3, which is Lonely Little Hell. This is the first single that they released. I believe they released it last year in December. And this one I really dug upon first listen, and I think that in the confines of this EP, it is probably the odd one out, I would say, in terms of like the black sheet of the record. It feels the most different. But even said, I feel like a lot of these tracks, especially this track and Going On, I feel like are the most diverse tracks that they've kind of done. In terms of the first two, I think the first two, Off the Grid and Clutter, feel the most similar to each other, while the other three kind of feel a little bit more I don't want to say experimental because they do really keep into the sort of Great Heights band's lane, but they do have that sort of difference of sound and, you know, rhythmic qualities, things of that nature. But getting back to this track, Lonely Little Hell, I love Owen's bass kind of intro riff that kind of carries throughout the entire portion of the song. I thought that was one of the coolest kind of bass riffs that I've like solo bass riffs that I've heard so far, which is definitely cool. I appreciate the darker undertones of this track. I think it's something that they really didn't tap into in the Rad Pop record. So it's nice to see them pull from more of the minor kind of scale / flavor. It's again a little bit more kind of edgier in that sort of respect. I really appreciated the instrumentation of this track. However, probably one of my favorite portions of the track is there's this kind of like almost like mandolin-ish part, like in between the chorus and I think the whatever the verse would be, whether it be the second verse. I don't know if they did it in the pre-chorus or the first verse, but I really appreciated that. It was a nice little switch up as well. But I think the whole thing that really pulls this track together is Paul's drumming. He really is just nailing it in the pocket, and I love the energy that he brings, but also I love the kind of restraint that he has in terms of just not going nuts on a track, but really allowing the track to breathe, but also knowing when to put in energy into the track. And I think that's the sign of a really great drummer, is, you know, if he's able to hold his restraint. So appreciate that immensely. And this track was another really fantastic one if you haven't checked it out already. So we're gonna move into track number 4, which is Sun. This one feels the most punky to me. You know, it feels very kind of cut to the chase, really nothing too crazy. You hear power chords, you know, it's nothing like earth shattering, but I think it is really well done. I think the way that Neil kind of leads this track, I think, is definitely a solid point. I don't know if I really enjoyed it as much, if I feel like it was more of an Eric centric track, but just for some reasons Neil's tone, particularly on this track, just works with the song. Another portion that I really liked is the lead guitar work. I think just the little bits here and there just make this track a little bit just more interesting rather than more kind of like straightforward, a little bit more bare. You know, there isn't a whole lot going on. It just feels very kind of straightforward. That's the best word I can use to describe it. And again, solid track, but again, nothing really stand out. So we're going to move into the last track number 5, which is Don't Tell Me That You Love Me. This one took me by surprise. It was a little bit softer. It's a little bit slower. It has more of a build to it, especially in that sort of pre-chorus, chorus era of the track. But I one of the biggest things that I enjoyed about this track is kind of in the verses is this sort of openness, this sort of kind of ethereal-ish quality to it. I really love how that is written in, and also just kind of is not, I would guess to say is taken advantage of a little bit, and there's respect that it just really gives the track a lot of time to kind of work at it and kind of build. I really love the melodies in this track. I think, you know, they're extremely well done, and again, while the track's being led by Eric, I think it is extremely well put together. Neil kind of comes in little spurts, but it's nothing like too crazy, and I guess Neil could talk on it if he does watch this, so he could tell me if he's in the song a little bit more than what I'm actually giving him credit for. But I thought this one was a really solid one. I think it's a great closer track, and I think it does combine a little bit of elements of this record particularly, but I think it's also hard to kind of put everything together when you have kind of 5 tracks and you have to have them all kind of have their own individual voice. So I think that overall I enjoyed the close out of this track. So some pros and cons that I have about it. I think one of the biggest cons for me is just the lack of synth. It was one of those elements that I really appreciated from Rad Pop, their first full length. It was just something that I know that they were kind of more, I guess, experimental on, but it just, to me, whenever I'm listening to this band, it's something that kind of sticks out to me. So I'd love to hear a little bit more of that sort of electronic energy built in there. I think that would have been really tight. I think songs like I think Sun would have been really cool with a little bit of like synth here and there. The last track could have definitely used a little bit of like, like pads or something going on. I think it would have been a nice change of pace from the just like real kind of like synthy sort of parts. Another con, which again can't be too aggressive on, but is just a short but sweet record. That one's not too big of a gripe, at least for me. I knew coming into this it was going to be an EP, so it wasn't, I guess, to say disappointing, but obviously I feel like as a fan you always want more music, which I gotta get out of that mindset. But really enjoyed that one. Some pros and cons that I have about it: super catchy. There's a lot of the tracks are really well done. I would say probably my favorites is definitely Clutter. I think without a doubt that's one of my favorite tracks of this year, without a doubt. Super catchy, again, earworm qualities, really enjoyed that. Lonely Little Hell is probably a close second, and then I'd say Don't Tell Me That You Love Me. I thought that was very solid. Maybe kind of tied with Off the Grid. I feel like the first three tracks really just kind of knock it out of the park. And then the latter two tracks, while they are solid, I really felt like they didn't sell me as much as the first three did. Great vocal takes from both Eric and Neil. I think they do a great job of that. Great harmonies as well. Always appreciate that. I will always appreciate it. So definitely enjoyable, and overall I think it's just a fun record. It wasn't anything too like outlandish. It's not like lyrically, it's not like just complex. It's just a really well put together pop, rock, punk kind of esque record. So if you enjoyed this band's previous work, Rad Pop, I feel like there's definitely a lot of tracks on here that you'll enjoy and get a lot of mileage out of. But my overall rating for the Great Heights band's Cabin Fever, I'm going to be giving it a 9.4 out of 10. I think it's really solid. I definitely stand by a lot of the stuff that I said. Obviously, I'm doing a review of it, so I feel like I would stand by it. But, I do appreciate they kind of made it more interesting, especially with the last two tracks being more of a kind of like punk riff sort of track, and then the other one being kind of more ethereal, a little bit more like lax, a little bit more like vibey, and both of those tracks have their merits, but I feel like that this first half of this EP, really good stuff. So let me know in the comments what you think about the record. If you agree with me, if you disagree, if you haven't checked the band out, go check out this record, Cabin Fever. Also go check out Rad Pop, which I'll pull back up again. Very cool just artwork. I know that I may or may not have already talked about it, but I really appreciate. I've had it for a while, and I've appreciated the artwork for what it is, despite how wild it can look. But yeah, let me know what you think about this band. Go check out the interviews I've done with them in the past. If you're a new fan, please make sure to hit that thumbs up, share it, subscribe. It goes a long way. Thank you guys for the awesome support. Again, it's been so cool to see all new people coming to check out the channel. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully you'll stick around for more content to come. I hope all of you are staying safe out there. I hope you all continue to stay safe. It's a very strange time right now, and I hope that things like this are helping you get by. So my name is Brandon. We hope you got your fix, and we'll be talking with you soon. Peace.